The UK, the European, the US car industry right now, it feels almost, you might say, like Carmageddon.
Across the UK, Europe, and North America, the automotive landscape feels like it's facing a seismic shift, perhaps even, dare we say, Carmageddon. The global car industry is in a profound crisis. Once powerful, even iconic brands are now teetering on the very precipice of collapse. From plummeting sales figures and desperately outdated model lineups to relentless, fierce competition from both established giants and aggressive newcomers, these storied names are fighting tooth and nail just to keep their engines turning. In today's video, we're pulling back the curtain on the stark reality facing 10 car brands staring down the barrel of potential extinction. We'll dissect why this alarming trend is accelerating, what it means for you if you're considering buying one, and crucially, how to avoid getting stuck with a vehicle from a brand that could very soon fade into irrelevance. Make sure you stick around because the last two brands on our list are in such critically deep trouble, they might not even see the next decade. Number 10, Mitsubishi. Remember a time not so long ago when Mitsubishi vehicles were absolutely ubiquitous? Drive down any street in the late 1990s or early 2000s and you'd see them everywhere. Gallants cruising through parking lots, Eclipses gracing high school driveways, and the legendary Lancer Evolutions roaring with performance prowess. They cultivated a reputation for delivering affordable, somewhat sporty cars that, crucially, had personality. But today, you'd be lucky to spot even one Mitsubishi during your daily commute. Yes, Mitsubishi did report a sales increase in the US in 2023, which on the surface sounds positive. However, context is everything. They moved just over 87,000 vehicles that year. To put that in brutal perspective, giants like Toyota, Honda, and even Subaru sell more than that in a single month. It's like celebrating finding a few dollars in an old coat pocket while your neighbors are cashing multi-million-dollar lottery checks. And here's where the situation turns dire. Mitsubishi recently axed its most affordable and highest volume model, the Mirage. Let's be clear, the Mirage was far from a masterpiece. It had a notoriously weak engine, minimal technology, and an interior crafted mostly from hard plastic. But it was dirt cheap, incredibly fuel efficient, and reliably got you from A to B for the price. For thousands of budget-conscious buyers, college students, young families, rideshare drivers, the Mirage was often the only new car within reach in a market where average transaction prices have soared past $48,000. So, with the Mirage gone, what's left? Mitsubishi's US lineup is now reduced to just 3 aging SUVs, the Outlander, the smaller Outlander Sport, and the oddly styled Eclipse Cross. None of them possess a truly compelling edge in the savagely competitive SUV segment already dominated by powerhouses like the Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, and Hyundai Tucson. The Outlander, technically their flagship, is largely based on the Nissan Rogue platform, a byproduct of Mitsubishi's alliance with Nissan and Renault, highlighting a lack of unique identity. Even its once class-leading plug-in hybrid version now struggles against newer, more sophisticated rivals like the Toyota RAV4 Prime. The Eclipse Cross? It awkwardly attempts to fuse the sporty heritage of the old coupe with an SUV body, resulting in a design that feels dated and forgettable. Often criticized by reviewers as underpowered and unrefined, adding to their woes, Mitsubishi operates 0 US production plants. Every single vehicle must be imported, adding cost, complexity, and significant delays, issues that severely hampered them during the pandemic and chip shortages. Walk into one of Mitsubishi's dwindling 300-odd dealerships, and the prognosis becomes starkly apparent. Lots often look sparse. Salespeople have minimal new inventory to push. There's no buzz, no anticipation, no exciting new generation Lancer or groundbreaking electric SUV generating hype. Unless Mitsubishi dramatically reinvents itself with genuinely competitive, distinctive vehicles, or executes a rapid, convincing pivot to compelling EVs, it risks following the path of forgotten brands like Saturn and Pontiac, names synonymous, one with a past legacy but possessing no discernible future. If you thought that was troubling, prepare yourself for the plight of the brands still to come. Number 9, Maserati. The name alone conjures images of Italian elegance, blistering performance, and unattainable luxury. For years, a Maserati was the ultimate status symbol, the go-to vehicle for athletes, celebrities, and anyone eager to flaunt success. But today, even those buyers are abandoning ship. In 2023, Maserati sold a mere 4,119 cars in the United States, less than half the number sold just the year prior. Globally, the picture is equally grim, with sales collapsing by 57% to just 11,300 units, leaving parent company Stellantis facing a painful $285 million loss attributed specifically to the brand. What in the world happened to the once coveted Trident brand? Let's dissect the breakdown. Firstly, reliability. While Maseratis undeniably boast breathtaking design, the engineering underneath has become a significant liability. Owners routinely report frustrating electrical bugs, temperamental transmissions, questionable build quality, and unpredictable engine problems. For a vehicle commanding price tags well over $100,000, consistent costly reliability issues are not just a nuisance, they are an absolute deal breaker. Secondly, an identity crisis. Is Maserati striving to be a pure sports car rival to Ferrari? A lavish, ultra-luxury contender against Rolls-Royce? A more practical, high-end option competing with BMW or Mercedes? Their confused marketing and product strategy haven't provided a clear answer, leaving potential buyers unsure of where the brand truly fits. Even their flashy MC20 supercar, designed to be a halo model, struggled to generate sustained excitement or sales impact commensurate with its price. Then there's the brutal cost of ownership. Maseratis are eye-wateringly expensive to purchase and arguably even more exorbitant to maintain. Routine service bills can be astronomical, parts are notoriously difficult and costly to source, and depreciation hits these vehicles like a financial sledgehammer. Buyers who once leased them purely for the status are now asking, is the hassle and expense genuinely worth the quickly fading prestige? To compound their challenges, factors like import tariffs on European luxury cars haven't helped, especially since Maserati has zero manufacturing presence in the US, meaning every car incurs additional cost. In a telling sign of struggle, even Ferrari, a brand selling significantly more expensive vehicles, outsold Maserati globally in 2023, over 13,700 units, and Lamborghini nearly matched them, over 10,100 units. When brands selling vehicles often double or triple your average price point are moving more volume, something is fundamentally broken. It reached a point where in 2023, Maserati's CEO, Davide Grasso, was replaced, a clear signal of executive dissatisfaction. The brand is adrift, lacking a cohesive EV strategy, bleeding sales, and watching its once potent prestige erode daily. Can Maserati truly navigate the next 5 years? Jaguar. At this rate, there was a time when arriving in a Jaguar was an undeniable corner of a dealership car that demanded attention, as a prop in a historical aura movie. Of sophistication. Up next is a effortless class tied to one of the titans of American automotive history. The sculpted long hood is equally shocking. Distinctive bold grille. It all screamed understated luxury and performance heritage. But today, Jaguar feels like barely a whisper in the automotive conversation. In 2023, Jaguar sold a mere 35,746 vehicles globally. Just 6 years prior, they were selling over 180,000 annually. That represents a staggering 80% sales collapse. And in the critical United States market, sales dwindled to just 11,307 units, a number rivals like Toyota can achieve in less than a single day. So how could this celebrated British icon fall so far, so fast? In one word, confusion. Jaguar's current strategy, announced by CEO Adrian Mardell, involves a drastic, arguably terrifying pivot, dumping virtually their entire gasoline-powered lineup to become an all-electric brand by 2025. On paper, it sounds visionary. In reality, it looks more like a desperate leap off a cliff with no clear landing zone. Right now, their product portfolio is down to effectively just one core model still in production, the F-Pace SUV, the XE and XF sedans, gone. The I-Pace EV, once a promising entry, effectively phased out without a clear replacement ready. And ironically, the F-Pace, while initially successful, is now aging rapidly and struggling to compete against a flood of more modern, feature-rich rivals. Meanwhile, competitors aren't waiting. Lexus is building a reputation for world-class hybrid luxury, while BMW and Mercedes are rapidly deploying a diverse range of electric SUVs built on established platforms. But here's the truly high-stakes gamble. Jaguar's entire upcoming electric lineup won't be based on modified existing platforms. They are attempting to build an entirely new vehicle architecture and product range from the ground up. This necessitates colossal investment, years of complex development, and a massive bet that consumers will actually want to buy radically. Different, expensive electric Jaguars by the time they eventually arrive, potentially years from now. Auto analysts are deeply skeptical, with some predicting Jaguar could lose up to 85% of its current customer base during this disruptive transition, as their traditional buyer demographic is often older, more conservative luxury car enthusiasts, who still prefer the familiar feel and sound of a gasoline engine over a silent battery pack. Layer onto this challenges like import tariffs. Jaguar maintains no significant US manufacturing, making imported vehicles pricier, and you have a brand struggling to justify its premium cost in a market saturated with more established, reliable, and readily available luxury alternatives. Even loyal fans are asking, what is there left to buy into? Dealerships are struggling or closing. The current product lineup is skeletal. Service networks are shrinking. It's incredibly difficult to convince someone to spend $60,000 or more on a car from a brand with such an uncertain future and no apparent backup plan if this high-stakes EV gamble doesn't pay off. Even their expensive Formula E racing efforts, while generating some technical insight, haven't translated into tangible sales uplift. The brand's rich heritage, celebrated for Le Mans victories and design icons, feels increasingly disconnected from its present reality. So the existential question looms, can Jaguar's radical EV rebirth actually succeed? Or will this once legendary brand become a cautionary tale of automotive history before its first new electric model even hits volume production? Let's shift focus to a car brand whose vehicles still look breathtaking but have become, for many, a recurring nightmare to own. Number 7. Alfa Romeo. Let's be brutally honest. Alfa Romeo builds some of the most visually stunning, emotionally evocative cars on the planet. The sensual curves, the vibrant paint options, the aggressive, purposeful stance. They look like rolling sculptures, imbued with Italian passion and racetrack DNA. Cars like the Giulia sedan and Stelvio SUV appear perfectly suited for a high-speed pursuit in a James Bond film. But here lies the tragic paradox. Despite their undeniable beauty, people are simply unwilling to buy them in meaningful numbers anymore. Back in 2018, Alfa Romeo managed to sell nearly 24,000 vehicles in the United States, suggesting a promising return. Fast forward to 2023, and that number plummeted to a painful 8,865 units. That's not a gentle decline, that is a full-blown freefall. So what went so catastrophically wrong after such a promising start? Initially, Alfa Romeo seemed to have all the ingredients for success. The Giulia sedan was lauded for its sharp handling and spirited character. The Stelvio SUV offered a stylish, dynamic alternative in a crowded segment. But beneath that gorgeous skin, operational problems began to surface. Owners started reporting frustrating, sometimes debilitating issues alarmingly early in their ownership experience. Coolant leaks, mysterious warning lights appearing randomly, bizarre electrical gremlins, around the 40,000-mile mark, suspension. Issues often cropped up. One moment, you're savoring the spirited drive. The next, you're facing a repair bill that could induce cardiac arrest. Then came the seemingly endless string of recalls, not one or two, but dozens, addressing critical safety concerns ranging from faulty airbags and potential fuel leaks to outright brake system failures. Owning an Alfa Romeo began to feel less like enjoying Italian passion and more like playing mechanical roulette every time you turn the key. Even their high-performance halo models, the Giulia and Stelvio Quadrifoglio, powered by Ferrari-inspired engines capable of breathtaking acceleration, weren't immune. What good is a 0-60 time under 4 seconds if the car spends half its life languishing in the service bay? And the problems weren't confined to just mechanical woes. Their infotainment systems are often laggy and unintuitive, voice commands are frequently unreliable, and the resale value? It tanks with alarming speed. A 3-year-old Giulia can lose nearly half its original value, a terrifying prospect for buyers in today's volatile used car market. To make matters worse, Alfa Romeo's parent company, Stellantis, has been systematically pruning the lineup. The exciting, high-strung Quadrifoglio models, discontinued in many markets. The delightful 4C sports car, long gone. What remains is a short list of expensive vehicles saddled with a reputation for unreliability, and no sign of significant ground-up quality improvements on the immediate horizon. Here's where it gets truly awkward. Try walking into an Alfa Romeo dealership and asking a salesperson why you should choose one over a demonstrably more reliable, easier to service BMW, Lexus, or even a Mazda. The answer often begins with a visible sigh and ends with a hesitant shrug. So where does Alfa Romeo go from here? There's persistent talk of a brand reboot centered around electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids, but let's be realistic. Swapping a gasoline engine for an electric powertrain won't magically fix flaky software, persistent electrical gremlins, or fundamental build quality issues. Until Alfa Romeo can conclusively prove it can be both stunningly beautiful and reliably bulletproof, most pragmatic buyers will continue to steer clear. That remains the million-dollar question for Stellantis. And if they don't find a convincing answer soon, Alfa Romeo risks following fellow failed European marques like Saab into the history books. Up next is a brand you definitely recognize, but likely haven't seen on a new car lot in ages. It's a cautionary tale of what happens when a brand disappears almost overnight. Number 6, Daewoo. If you're under 30, there's a significant chance the name Daewoo means absolutely nothing to you. But back in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Daewoo cars were surprisingly prevalent. They were cheap, notably compact, and aggressively marketed as the next wave of affordable imports from Asia, poised to challenge the dominance of Honda and Toyota's economy cars. So how does a brand transition from being a common sight in every parking lot to vanishing almost without a trace? Let's rewind to understand this rapid extinction event. Daewoo was a major South Korean automaker that made its fateful US debut in the late 1990s. Models like the Lanos, Leganza, and Nubira were boxy, yes, and offered basic transportation. Their primary and arguably only selling point was their rock-bottom affordability. College students, first-time drivers, and families on strict budgets flocked to them because you could drive away in a brand new Daewoo for under $10,000. A virtually unheard of price even then, but beneath that tempting price tag was a ticking mechanical time bomb. The build quality was notoriously flimsy. Parts were prone to premature failure. The engines were dramatically underpowered even by economy car standards. And when something inevitably went wrong, which it frequently did, finding a mechanic willing or able to work on a Daewoo was akin to an archaeological expedition. Replacement parts were either unavailable domestically or prohibitively expensive to import. Worse still, Daewoo's dealer network was a chaotic mess. In the US, many dealerships were independent, undercapitalized operations, leading to inconsistent customer service, minimal support after the sale, and a general sense of being left stranded if you needed help. While Japanese competitors meticulously built customer loyalty through legendary long-term reliability and robust service networks, Daewoo couldn't even manage basic competence. Then came the fatal blow. Daewoo's parent company in South Korea collapsed and filed for bankruptcy in the early 2000s amidst massive debt. General Motors, a major competitor at the time, swooped in, acquired the salvageable assets, and quietly began slapping Chevrolet badges on future models developed from Daewoo platforms. Just like that, the Daewoo brand in the US was gone. No grand farewell tour, no sentimental retirement party, just a sudden, quiet discontinuation. Fast forward to 2013, and over 55,000 Daewoos were still registered on UK roads. By 2023, that number had dwindled to a shocking 2,270, a jaw-dropping 96% decline in just a decade. It's a stark illustration of a brand actively fading from the public consciousness. With no official parts support, no dealerships, and zero remaining brand recognition in most major markets, even the few remaining Daewoo owners are scrambling to unload them before they become completely unsellable. Unlike brands like Saab or Pontiac, which still maintain a nostalgic cult following or at least a history of performance icons, Daewoo never produced a vehicle that anyone truly loved. No halo car, no standout model with personality, just disposable economy boxes that broke down quickly and faded from memory even faster. Here's the chilling part. Most car brands die a slow, agonizing death, but Daewoo is a rare example of a brand effectively achieving extinction in real time, like a mechanical dinosaur that just stopped moving and dissolved, leaving behind only a faint memory of poor gas mileage and cheaper plastics. And if you think that's brutal, wait until you hear what's happening to a brand that used to define small car swagger. Number 5, Mini. Once upon a time, buying a Mini felt less like purchasing a car and more like gaining entry into a cool, exclusive club. The cars were diminutive, incredibly fun to drive, undeniably stylish, and brimming with character. They stood out as the anti-SUV, the perfect, nimble choice for urbanites and driving enthusiasts who actively rejected boring transportation. But today, under BMW's stewardship, Mini seems to be grappling with a profound identity crisis, struggling to remember what made it special in the first place. In 2012, Mini was riding high in the US, selling over 66,000 vehicles. but by 2023, that figure plummeted to just 26,736. That's not a minor dip, that's a sales collapse that should trigger emergency alarms. Even their attempt to appeal to the SUV craze, the larger countryman, is currently gathering dust on dealer lots with an alarmingly high inventory supply. Code red in the auto industry. So what's going fundamentally wrong? First and foremost, Mini ceased being Mini. The cars grew significantly in size, but arguably not in commensurate quality or value. Suddenly, Minis were no longer tiny urban runabouts. They were expensive, somewhat bloated vehicles trying to compete directly against spacious, reliable compact SUVs and crossovers from brands like Subaru and Mazda, rivals that offered more interior space, significantly better reliability records, and fewer of Mini's traditional quirky design flaws or compromises, like tiny back seats and stiff rides. Second, BMW's management of the brand has appeared erratic and at times dismissive. Recent model updates intended to revitalize the lineup often felt half-hearted or were overshadowed by negative events, such as a company-wide recall over braking issues that rattled both owners and dealers. And don't even ask about ambitious electric projects like a planned electric Cooper convertible that BMW canceled before it ever reached production, signaling uncertainty about the brand's future direction. Even previously devoted fans are starting to drift away. Why pay upwards of $30,000 or more for a Mini with compromised practicality and lingering reliability question marks when you could get a generously equipped, demonstrably more dependable Honda Civic or Mazda CX-30 for the same or less money? And not worry about notoriously expensive maintenance or frustrating infotainment quirks. And let's not forget efficiency. Minis used to be celebrated for their fuel economy, but as they grew heavier and more powerful, their fuel consumption often increased. Some models barely crack 30 miles per gallon combined anymore, no longer competitive in a market increasingly demanding hybrid and electric options. Perhaps the most concerning aspect is the perception that BMW itself seems to be losing interest in actively developing or promoting the Mini brand. Marketing efforts have felt less impactful, new model launches feel less revolutionary, innovation seems stagnant. It's as if the brand is stuck in an awkward purgatory, too expensive and quirky for budget buyers, but not luxurious or sophisticated enough for the true premium segment. Unless Mini rediscovers and aggressively leverages the core elements that once made it a phenomenon, genuinely clever design, exhilarating go-kart handling, and attainable pricing relative to its character, it risks slowly fading into obscurity, much like the original British Leyland Mini eventually did, unable to adapt to modern demands. So what's next? Could another name that once dominated the streets be facing its final chapter? Number 4. Chrysler. There was a time when the name Chrysler represented the heart of American automotive ingenuity and industrial might. Alongside General Motors and Ford, it formed Detroit's legendary Big Three, a global symbol of manufacturing power. In its prime in 2005, Chrysler boasted a robust lineup spanning 7 distinct models, selling over 649,000 vehicles in that single year alone. But today, Chrysler is effectively a ghost of its former self, and its long, painful decline feels tragically inevitable. These days, the once mighty brand's entire product offering is reduced to just 2 models, the aging Pacifica minivan and its decontented, budget-oriented sibling, the Voyager. Once celebrated as the pioneer that created the modern minivan segment, the Pacifica is now the solitary standard-bearer for the brand. Yet, even these vehicles are struggling desperately, with combined sales having plummeted by over 50% in the last decade. That's hardly a recipe for survival, especially when you invented the segment decades ago. Chrysler's downfall wasn't a sudden event, but it certainly feels like management utterly failed to see the writing on the wall, as American families began a decisive shift away from minivans towards SUVs and crossovers. Chrysler inexplicably kept its strategic focus on the wrong ball. The company simply didn't adapt quickly or decisively enough to this fundamental market evolution. While competitors rapidly developed and launched a diverse array of popular SUVs, Chrysler stubbornly clung to the minivan as its primary offering. And to compound the strategic missteps, when Chrysler finally did attempt to signal a move towards the future, it felt like too little, too late. Remember the Airflow EV concept? It was promoted as Chrysler's grand leap into the electric vehicle market, a chance to reclaim some of the excitement and relevance it had long since lost. But despite the fanfare, the Airflow EV was quietly canceled before it ever had a chance. to reach production or make a meaningful impact. With no compelling new products on the immediate horizon and no clear, convincing electric vehicle strategy in place, Chrysler now finds itself desperately scrambling to catch up with an auto industry that has sprinted years ahead into electrification. Adding insult to this deep injury, Chrysler's parent company, Stellantis, under its notoriously cost-conscious CEO Carlos Tavares, has made it abundantly clear that underperforming brands within its vast portfolio are vulnerable to being cut or severely reduced. This places Chrysler in an extraordinarily precarious position. Some industry analysts believe Chrysler is now in a worse, more strategically vulnerable state than it was even during its infamous 1979 bankruptcy crisis, when the company required a massive $1.5 billion federal loan just to stay afloat. Back then, despite the financial peril, there was still a sense of innovative potential and a visible product pipeline, like the coming minivans. Now, that sense of future hope feels agonizingly absent. Chrysler is no longer perceived as an innovator. It's viewed as a relic, and with a barren product pipeline stretching years into the future, it's becoming increasingly likely that Chrysler's once proud legacy will soon become just a chapter in the history books of the American auto industry. So what possible path lies ahead for Chrysler? Without a genuinely game-changing new product or a sudden, radical shift in corporate strategy and investment, the brand appears to be inexorably headed towards extinction. Unless Chrysler somehow manages to engineer a miraculous rebirth and fast, it risks joining the ranks of names that once defined the American automotive landscape but have now vanished forever. Number 3. Nissan. There was a time when Nissan stood tall as a true powerhouse in the global automotive arena, celebrated for offering reliable, affordable, and genuinely innovative vehicles. In its peak years, Nissan commanded a significant share of the US automotive market, a testament to the brand's strong reputation and widespread appeal. But today, Nissan's once firm grip on the market has loosened dramatically, and it now struggles to maintain half of its former market share in key regions. This sharp, sustained decline isn't random. It's the direct consequence of a series of strategic missteps, internal turmoil, and a failure to adapt that has sent the company spiraling downwards. At the core of Nissan's prolonged struggles lies a profound inability to effectively anticipate and respond to rapidly evolving consumer preferences and market demands. The company, ironically, was once a leader in the electric vehicle revolution with the groundbreaking launch of the Nissan Leaf, one of the first truly mass-market EVs. Yet despite this pioneering head start, Nissan utterly failed to capitalize on its early success. While aggressive competitors like Tesla, Hyundai, and Volkswagen rapidly iterated and pushed forward with a wave of innovative, long-range electric models built on dedicated EV platforms, Nissan largely allowed the Leaf to stagnate, keeping it virtually unchanged for years and failing to follow up with compelling new electric offerings that could genuinely excite or satisfy modern EV buyers. As a direct result, the brand has been left significantly behind in the electric transition, watching as rivals captured market share they once seemed poised to dominate. But Nissan's woes aren't confined solely to the electric vehicle segment. The company's financial situation has become alarmingly precarious globally. In its home market of Japan, Nissan has faced periods teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, reporting eye-watering year-over-year profit losses. Despite repeated attempts to stabilize finances and outline recovery plans, Nissan continues to struggle, having demonstrably failed to reinvigorate its core product lineup or regain significant consumer trust lost along the way. One of Nissan's most significant challenges has been its failure to consistently offer vehicles that truly excite, differentiate, or delight buyers in crucial segments. While competitors like Toyota and Honda continue to capture massive market share with vehicles widely perceived as dependable, well-designed, and delivering strong value, Nissan's offerings have frequently been criticized as uninspiring, generic, and saddled with outdated designs and lackluster interior features. Worse yet, many of its volume vehicles, particularly those equipped with CVT transmissions, have developed a reputation for significant, costly reliability issues that owners report emerging relatively early in the vehicle's life. Problems that were once unthinkable for a brand known for building durable, trouble-free cars. The situation in the United States has been further exacerbated by Nissan's historically bloated and inefficient dealership network. The company operates far more dealerships than its current sales volume realistically requires, leading to intense internal competition among dealers and significant oversupply of unsold inventory piling up on lots. This combination of overproduction and stagnant demand has forced Nissan into a perpetual cycle of offering deep, margin-eroding discounts and incentives purely to move vehicles off the lot. While these heavy discounts may provide temporary boosts to sales volume figures, they come at the devastating expense of profitability and long-term brand value, creating a vicious cycle that is proving incredibly difficult to break. Adding to the chaos, Nissan has suffered through a rapid succession of leadership changes, including the highly publicized arrest and eventual escape of its former CEO, Carlos Ghosn, on charges of financial misconduct. This constant executive instability and reputational damage have created deep uncertainty within the company, hindering its ability to execute a coherent, long-term strategy. Without strong, stable leadership and a clear, compelling product vision, Nissan has struggled to regain momentum, and its future trajectory remains dangerously uncertain. So what lies ahead for this once mighty automotive player? If Nissan does not act swiftly, decisively, and innovatively to revitalize its product lineup, address its fundamental reliability concerns, and streamline its operations, it risks following the path of other major Japanese brands that ultimately exited the US market, such as Suzuki, which once held a significant presence before its eventual withdrawal. With key competitors consistently outpacing it in critical areas like EV development, profitability, perceived reliability, and design appeal, Nissan faces an incredibly tough uphill battle. Unless something truly drastic changes soon, it could tragically become another major brand name that disappears from the competitive US market in the not-so-distant future. Number 2, Fiat. Fiat's situation in the United States is arguably one of the most perplexing and disheartening stories in the modern automotive industry. Imagine a brand that sells well over 1 million vehicles worldwide, a significant global player, but struggles to sell a pathetic 1,228 vehicles in the entire United States market over a full year, 2023 figures. To hammer home the absurdity of that number, consider that Toyota, one of Fiat's major global competitors, sold an average of over 6,800 vehicles per day in the US during that same period. So, how did a company with such a massive global footprint and historical legacy manage to execute such a spectacular, seemingly irreversible flop in the world's second largest auto market? The answer lies in a perfect storm of factors that Fiat, despite repeated attempts, simply couldn't overcome. There was a brief glimmer of hope following Fiat's much-hyped return to the US market under the ownership of Chrysler in 2011. For a moment, it seemed like the quirky, stylish Fiat 500 might carve out a niche. The brand even managed a peak of over 46,000 sales in 2014, which was optimistically viewed as a sign of a potential comeback. But almost immediately thereafter, everything began to unravel with stunning speed. What initially felt like a promising restart quickly devolved into a slow, agonizing, and seemingly terminal collapse. The first and arguably most devastating issue was Fiat's abysmal reliability, or more accurately, the legendary lack thereof. Consumer Reports, the influential arbiter of vehicle reliability in the US, consistently ranked Fiat vehicles at or near the very bottom of their reliability surveys year after year. These cars became synonymous with mechanical problems, electrical failures, and frequent trips to the service center. For American consumers who highly prioritize long-term durability and hassle-free ownership, this was an insurmountable hurdle. In a market where you're directly competing with brands like Toyota, Honda, and Ford, all known for their reliability, entering with vehicles perceived as mechanically fragile is a death sentence. Without a foundation of dependability, Fiat couldn't retain consumer interest, and the brand quickly gained a reputation for being a mechanical liability. Next, Fiat's product lineup was fundamentally mismatched with the dominant preferences of the American market. The brand is globally renowned for producing small, compact, often two-door city cars like the iconic Fiat 500, vehicles that, while charming in congested European cities, simply do not resonate with the overwhelming majority of US buyers. Americans overwhelmingly favor larger vehicles, trucks, SUVs, and spacious crossovers. Over the past decade, the demand for small cars in the US has plummeted dramatically, making Fiat's core offerings feel increasingly irrelevant. Fiat's tiny, quirky, and distinctly European vehicles lacked the size, practicality, and perceived utility that US buyers were craving, leading to a fundamental disconnect between what Fiat was selling and what the market wanted to buy. Now, Fiat faces an existential decision under the Stellantis umbrella. Global sales have reportedly dropped, and its US numbers are frankly pathetic. Stellantis has a tough, financially driven choice. Continue to pour money into a brand that has barely registered a pulse in the US market for years, burning valuable resources, or cut their losses entirely and pull the plug on what appears to be a failed, costly experiment. At this juncture, it's exceptionally difficult to envision a viable path forward for Fiat in America, unless they can somehow execute a radical reinvention, perhaps with a lineup of larger, reliable, and relevant vehicles built specifically for the US market, an unlikely prospect given their history and global strategy. They seem destined to fade entirely into the background. Just another nameplate that tried, failed spectacularly, and couldn't crack the unique code of the US automotive landscape. And finally, the ultimate cautionary tale, the brand that reached the end of the road. Number 1. Rover. Rover was once a name that evoked images of quintessentially British luxury, understated elegance, and solid engineering excellence. It was a brand deeply woven into the fabric of British identity, but in a relatively short span of time, the brand went from being a proud symbol of British automotive design and heritage to a mere shadow, then vanishing entirely. Consider this. In 2013, over 276,000 British-made Rover vehicles were still registered and on UK roads, a testament to their longevity and popularity. By 2023, that number had plummeted by an astonishing 87%, with only around 35,000 remaining. The brand that once captured the hearts of car lovers, particularly in the UK, is now barely a blip in the automotive census. What catastrophic events led to Rover's ultimate demise? The story is a complex, painful blend of serial mismanagement, disastrous corporate decisions, and a fundamental inability to adapt to the rapidly accelerating changes in the global automotive landscape. Once known for producing reliable, stylish vehicles, Rover's reputation began to erode significantly in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Passed through a dizzying succession of corporate ownership changes, from British Leyland to British Aerospace, then BMW, and finally the ill-fated Phoenix Venture Holdings. The company struggled desperately to maintain a coherent identity, strategic direction, or consistent investment. With each ownership shift, the brand's intrinsic value weakened, its focus blurred, and its resources dwindled. By the time the company limped into the 21st century, Rover was already facing an existential battle against better-funded, more focused global competitors, and it wasn't long before its chronic financial troubles and lack of competitive product became insurmountable. One of the primary reasons Rover failed to keep pace was its profound lack of sustained investment in critical technology and platform development. While other brands were aggressively focusing on implementing modern safety standards, improving fuel efficiency, developing advanced powertrains, and integrating cutting-edge in-car technology, Rover seemed stuck in a time warp. Their vehicle platforms felt outdated, their engines lacked efficiency compared to rivals, and their interior technology was laughably behind the curve. In a global market that was evolving at breakneck speed, Rover appeared paralyzed, standing still, and this stagnation fatally wounded the brand as consumers decisively gravitated towards more modern, technically advanced, and competitive vehicles. Then there was the crippling issue of brand identity, or lack thereof. Rover had once been synonymous with accessible luxury and classic British elegance, but through years of inconsistent product planning and marketing under various owners, that clear image faded. The brand seemed unable to decide what it wanted: to be a genuine premium automaker or a more mainstream volume player. This critical lack of focus alienated potential buyers who sought a clear value proposition or brand ethos. To make matters worse, Rover's sales were overwhelmingly concentrated and reliant on the relatively limited UK domestic market, as the company failed disastrously to expand its presence and sales meaningfully in other major global regions. It found itself increasingly constrained by the size and specific preferences of the British market alone. With the global automotive industry demanding scale, technological leadership, and diverse market reach, Rover's stagnant, domestically focused approach was a recipe for disaster, leading to its inevitable decline into irrelevance. In 2005, the final, painful chapter was written when MG Rover Group collapsed, and the brand that had once been a beacon of British automotive pride officially ceased mass production. Its fall from grace was swift, brutal, and served as a stark cautionary tale for any automotive company that fails to innovate, adapt, and maintain a clear identity in a relentlessly competitive global market. Today, the Rover name lives on, primarily as a historical footnote, with only a dwindling number of its vehicles still on the road, cherished by enthusiasts or awaiting a final trip to the scrapyard. The dream of a thriving, independent British luxury brand represented by Rover is long gone. Its story a definitive example of automotive extinction. We hope you found this deep dive into the struggles of these car brands both informative and perhaps a little sobering. For another video exploring the dynamic shifts shaping the automotive world, be sure to check out the next video that pops up on your screen.